If there's one thing in the NBA we can always count on, it's player movement. Whether it be the draft, trade deadline, offseason, there's always a star that wants out, that ends up getting moved to a different team. And now that we've gone through the summer of Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant, we got to start looking at some other guys. Who are the next stars that are going to be asking out of their situations or just be traded in general? And that's what today's list is. Just want to point out quickly that when James Harden got traded, I said that Donovan Mitchell was going to be the next star to ask to be traded. I missed the Kevin Durant thing, but the Donovan Mitchell thing I got. With that said, let's begin with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, this is a little bit of a weird one, right? Because we don't really have a lot of rumors about Shai. For the most part, it seems like Shai is happy in Oklahoma City. And even though they have not had a ton of success, they're clearly building towards something. They have a lot of young talent. They have all the draft picks, and they have at least somewhat of a plan. And when they've tried to be good, they've been like a 500 basketball team in the beginning of the last couple of seasons. However, at a certain point, if you're SGA, you got to look around and wonder, like, at what point are we going to give this a real shot? Like, I've been with y'all for a couple of seasons. This is now like my 5th season in the league. Can we maybe like do this for real one year and try and make the playoffs? Now, granted, he has made the playoffs with Oklahoma City when Chris Paul was there, and it hasn't been that long since that team. But given Chet's injury this season and the fact that they're probably going to want to be in on the Wembanyama sweepstakes, if they punt on another season, I think teams like New York, teams like Miami, all these teams around the league that are always star locations are going to be looking at trying to get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander out of OKC. And I don't even think that's that big of a deal for Oklahoma City, quite frankly. I think that if they got really good value in exchange for SGA, they would probably take it. He's a guy that's already signed a rookie extension. Everybody else pretty much on the roster is on a rookie contract with the exception of SGA, and they're all about value. Whenever they do decide to go for it, they'd like to have SGA be the center of that, but they have plenty of other options on their roster and in the next couple of drafts to really put together a competitive team. And so for them and Sam Presti, it's all about value. And I really think that there's a possibility where this time next offseason, we're looking at a situation where not that they're actively shopping SGA, but that they would take offers for him, and there are other teams that maybe lack a star option better than him in terms of a trade. We know that whether it be last offseason, the season before, they've had conversations with teams about SGA at draft time and otherwise, and I wouldn't be surprised to see his name continue to come up in those kinds of conversations. Next up is a much more obvious one. It's Bradley Beal. If you've watched any of my Bradley Beal videos on this channel, you know where I stand with this. I don't care about the no trade clause from Bradley Beal's perspective. I don't care about the contract that he signed. I don't care what he says publicly about wanting to stay in Washington and how nice it would be to win a title there. Like, yeah, I'm sure that would be really nice. That title would count more for Bradley Beal than it would be if he went to Miami or Philadelphia and won a title there. But the bottom line is he has the money now. The whole reason, in my opinion, and it's been speculated that he has stayed in Washington for this long is to get the contract that he just signed and then get somewhere else. And so if you take away the context of what Bradley Beal has said publicly, and you can like it or not, but it's a pretty common occurrence for NBA players to say one thing publicly and privately say a different thing. So if you take that away and you look at the situation Bradley Beal's been in, they haven't been all that good. He's been productive when healthy. That's normally a recipe for a star player to ask out. He got as big of a contract as he possibly could have, and he's angled his way towards getting that contract over the last couple of seasons by signing shorter deals, getting to a certain year of service, and then signing his big deal. And he has a no trade clause that allows him to dictate the exact destination he would like to go to. If he does request a trade, he has to approve the deal. So if he only wants to go to the Lakers and the Heat, Washington has to exclusively deal with those two teams because he won't approve a deal anywhere else. He has positioned himself perfectly to get the most amount of money and go to a team he would like to where he can have some success in the later part of his career. However, there's people out there that refuse to believe that that's what he's doing because of things that he said publicly about wanting to stay in Washington. No part of me thinks that if the Wizards win 40 games the next 2 seasons, that Bradley Beal is just gonna be like, this is fine. If they're bad, it's going to accelerate it. And I think in general, he's going to want to ask out. Whether it happens before some of these other guys on the list or the unforeseen player that's not even on the list, I don't know. But he has to be on the list. He has to be someone that you keep an eye on over the next couple of seasons. Next up is one that is kind of developed this offseason, Jaylen Brown. And so even without the Kevin Durant thing, I think there are signs here you could potentially be looking at Jaylen Brown getting traded or being on a different team or being unhappy. I think there were signs of that, especially in the beginning of the season, but also just logistically in terms of his situation with with Boston right now. But just to recap that, Jaylen Brown's not signing an extension with Boston. He's just not. He's going to go to 2024 unrestricted free agency, and then he's going to figure out his options from there. Financially, it makes zero sense for him to sign an extension. One, because the cap will continue to go up. Two, there's a new TV rights deal coming up at some point down the road, so there's no point in signing a long-term extension when he could, kind of double up on that money. And then also, he didn't sign a max contract as a rookie extension, and the way that the rules work is if he was to sign an extension right now, rather than waiting until this current one runs out, he would only be eligible to sign for like 120% of his previous contract, which isn't a max, until he continually goes down from there. He cannot sign a max extension with Boston right now, and even if he did sign a max extension, it wouldn't be worth as much as one that he would get in 2024. With all that said, to me, that means that you're going to be a little bit nervous if you're a Celtics fan for the next 2 seasons, and if you're the Celtics themselves, because you never really know exactly what that guy is thinking, and he's going to go all the way to unrestricted free agency, which will make them nervous. Will it make them nervous enough to trade him? Will it make them nervous enough for him to kind of have some issues with the team and clash with the team and request a trade? I don't know. I don't even know that anybody would trade for him, knowing that he's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2024. But what I do know is that situation causes tension and it causes stress, and that is a recipe for a player that might want to ask out. I understand that it's crazy to say that about a team that literally just made the finals, with Jaylen Brown being arguably their best player in the finals. But given the context around him, maybe some ruffled feathers about the Kevin Durant thing this offseason, I think it's a real possibility that he ends up on a different team within the next 2 seasons. And then maybe even after that in his 2024 unrestricted free agency. Next up now, how about Zion? Another guy that just signed a contract, like someone else later on in this list. We've already talked about Beal as well. I'm not ready to put away the Zion not wanting to be in New Orleans stuff yet. Now, again, it's just like the Beal thing. Publicly, he's going to say what he wants to say, and he's not going to actively upset the fans of the team that he currently plays for. But if someone told me, a couple of seasons from now, Zion is on the Knicks or in Miami, I'm not going to be shocked. As well set up as I think New Orleans is right now from a roster perspective, with CJ, Dyson Daniels, all the two-way players they have, Ingram, Zion, if he's healthy, I think there's a real possibility that at some point he just outgrows that situation, whether it be the fact that him and Brandon Ingram can't quite figure out how to coexist, or he just wants to be somewhere else. He can say what he wants to right now, but it's been pretty widely reported that not only was New Orleans not near the top of his list come draft night, but that he also just in general doesn't really like it there. And I'm sure when he probably felt like he was going to be the first pick in the draft, he was hoping to go somewhere like New York, who could have had the first pick in the draft. And now that he signed the extension, it's just like the Beal thing. He has his money. In 3 seasons from now, he can say, hey, this isn't working for me. Trade me somewhere else. That's always a realistic possibility. Now he's gotten the max that he wants from New Orleans, despite not being healthy. And if he is healthy, and if he's awesome for the next couple of seasons, but because of a bit of a weird fit on the roster, New Orleans isn't particularly great. Maybe they're a 45, 48 win team, but not really competing for titles. Zion asking out is still a real possibility that has not gone away in the slightest, in my opinion. Second to last now, what about Jimmy Butler? Now, on the surface, this one doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, this is a guy that is leading a team to deep playoff runs, over the last couple of seasons, and is clearly the guy in Miami. It's a stable franchise. It's a franchise that is always going to look to continue to improve the roster and push towards the title. It's a team that has options in Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo in terms of making trades. They could have potentially tried to make a trade work for Kevin Durant this offseason. He's in a very good position. Players love living in Miami. It's a great organization to play for, and it's an organization that is committed to winning with a great owner, great management, and a great coach. However, the Jimmy Butler experience has never been something that lasts too long, whether that be because of the team or himself. So when you think about the Chicago thing, that got weird. They moved him to Minnesota. The Minnesota thing got really weird. He pushed his way out of there, and then Philly did not last long at all. We already saw some rumblings during this past season with maybe some unhappiness with Jimmy Butler's attitude or behavior or whatever the case may be. And I'm just saying it's not out of the realm of possibility that even as old as he is and the big contract that he's on, that another team pounces on the opportunity to trade for Jimmy Butler if Miami starts to go downhill a little bit, maybe wants to look a little bit more towards the future of like the Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero version of Miami Heat basketball, and that maybe they just get a little bit tired of Jimmy Butler. Like, as hard as the guy works and as great of a player as he is, it's been pretty well reported and documented that he isn't always the greatest guy to have around all the time, and that can lead to either him pushing his way out or the team just getting sick and tired of it. And that clock, I think, is ticking a little bit in Miami. It would take a couple of different things to go wrong in order for them to get pushed to that point. The Heat not being good, them getting irritated with JB and him forcing his way out. They would take a couple of things, but I do think he's worth putting on this list just strictly based off of his history with the last couple of franchises that he's played with in his NBA career. And then last up, another guy that just signed a contract, Zach LaVine. I'm just saying, If you want to tell me Zach LaVine is still in the Bulls in 5 years, cool, that's totally fine. But there were plenty of rumblings about the fact that maybe he wasn't super happy in Chicago when they weren't very good. They were better last year, certainly, but they weren't like championship contenders. And he signed the new contract, but they reportedly tried to lowball him a little bit on that contract, and they weren't necessarily 100% Zach LaVine believers. And players remember that kind of stuff. And if they don't feel fully taken care of by their franchise and things start to go south, that can be a big issue. And they are one DeMar DeRozan injury away from being like a 35-win team. Like Patrick Williams is nice. Zach LaVine is good. They've got Lonzo, who hopefully will play. Caruso, Ayo. I like a lot of their pieces. Vucevic, a lot of their pieces on the roster are solid. But if DeMar gets hurt and misses like a couple of months of the season or the entire season, and Lonzo's knee thing continues to bother him, they're back to where they were before DeMar got there and had a fantastic season. Like 35 or 40 wins in a worst case scenario situation for Chicago is not unlikely. And then you're looking at DeMar, who's aging. Lonzo's got the knee stuff. Vucevic has not been a very good fit on this roster. Zach LaVine's looking around wondering like, what in the world is going on here? And this is a team that has given away some future first round picks as well. So they're kind of limited in how they can continue to build this roster around LaVine. It's not like this is a team that has 10 first round picks over the next 7 seasons. They already owe picks to Orlando and to San Antonio in some of the moves that they've already made. And so that to me is just something worth keeping an eye on. I'm not saying Zach LaVine's going to ask out next year. He just signed this big contract, but you always have to pay attention to guys like this that maybe don't feel super taken care of or welcomed by their franchise and are clearly max contract level players. Other teams are always going to look to try and pounce on that and pry that guy away from that team. And I think Zach LaVine is certainly worth keeping an eye on in that aspect. And that is the end of the list. Let me know down in the comment section below who you would have put on the list. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.